I feel like we're not talking enough about the fact that the Alabama Supreme Court quoted the Bible and cited the wrath of God as their legal reasoning for why frozen embryos are in fact children. So much for the separation of church and state, right? The same state of Alabama which just executed Kenneth Smith via nitrogen gas asphyxiation would like you to know that frozen embryos are children because, as per the Bible, life cannot be destroyed without incurring the wrath of a holy God. Here's the thing we all have to understand. The Dobbs decision has an extremely long tail, and that tail is not done swiping our rights away from us. Not by a mile. They're not going to stop with abortion, and this ruling in Alabama is an indication of that fact. They're coming for IVF already. They're also going to come for contraception. And if you think recreational sex isn't in their sights, boy, oh boy, would you be wrong. They believe that sex is for procreation only. And of course, we don't know what they do behind closed doors, but I have a funny feeling it's not what they're preaching for others. So much is at stake in this election. A lot of people like myself, I know I was among them, were pretty naive about Republicans overturning Roe. I just didn't think they would do it. I never thought they would. And I was fooled. And I won't be fooled again. My eyes are wide open. And I know that there is no end to their awfulness. And that is why we have to stop them. Well, on a happier note, I am the luckiest girl in the world because this week my guest is Dave Foley. Yes, Dave Foley from Kids in the Hall. Comic, legend, genius, brilliant, incredibly funny human being is on my podcast today. And I cannot overstate how effing cool this is for me. When Kids in the Hall came out in 1988, I was in 8th grade and I was mesmerized immediately. I'd never seen anything like it. I'd never laughed so hard as I did watching it. I couldn't get enough. And it was one of the few times that my immediately bigger sister, because there's 4 of us in my family, it's one of the few times we ever really got along. We both were like, this is good. This is funny. And then we would talk about it, other times. I still think about some of the sketches in my daily life to this day. So getting to talk to Dave was pretty mind-blowing. But also super enjoyable and really, really fun. Surprising. Like, I didn't know it would be fun, but it was just a different conversation. I mean, you know him from Kids in the Hall, but you also, of course, know he was on News Radio with Phil Hartman, may he rest in peace, which is one of the most underrated sitcoms of all time. And now, of course, you can see him in Fargo's 5th season, which is critically acclaimed. And here's something you probably didn't know. He also has a podcast about what I call UFOs, but apparently they're called UAPs. The podcast is called Really, ? With Tom and Dave. Honestly, I was not expecting to have as in-depth a conversation as we have about UAPs and aliens, but it's so effing interesting to me and a little scary. And Dave knows a lot about this subject, so it's definitely a departure from my usual conversations that are very politically focused, but I could not get enough of the stuff he was talking about. I had an incredible time. It just flew by, even though it's not a short interview. But I was glued to my seat, and there's a moment where you'll know how on the edge of my seat I was, because I literally kind of jumped. So anyway, I can't wait till you guys watch and listen and then let me know what you think. And then I would love to have this bigger conversation about UAPs and aliens, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff we should be talking about. A lot of stuff that I really never knew. Anyway, so enjoy, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye. Welcome to the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast, Dave Foley. Hi, Dave.
Hi. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Everybody out there.
Thanks for welcoming me into your lovely home.
Yes. As my trolls like to say, my meth den. This is where I cook methamphetamines. This is where I do that right here. Yeah. This is where They also like to say my kids were taken from me. That one's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Your trolls are awful.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I know. I follow you on the what we used to happily call Twitter.
I still
And
call it that. I can't stop calling it that.
I know. X is so stupid.
It's so stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like just a nerdy kid in his basement trying to sound cool. I'm gonna call it X. X is cool.
I'm gonna take this
I put an X on my shirt.
I'm gonna take the totally recognizable, well-branded thing that is accepted, into just vernacular thing, so much so that people say they're going to tweet still, and I'm going to just call it X.
Yeah, and I wish there was some way that the absolutely fantastic classic LA punk band could sue him over it.
Right.
Yeah.
For bazillions of dollars. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but people get away with a lot. He gets away with so much. It's crazy too, because like the accountability thing that seems to be lacking from people like him, people like obviously Donald Trump, but like they're awful. It's awful, and it just keeps feeding their awfulness.
I agree.
Yeah. But when I first discovered that you followed me, which is such a weird thing to say because it sounds like a cult, like you're my follower, because I was your follower first. And then I said, I noticed you were following me. And I pretty much died dead because like I'm not kidding when I tell you, and it's weird to tell you this to your face through a computer screen, but still, that like I think I cut my comedy teeth, like what I thought of as funny in the world, on Kids in the Hall. So it's crazy to me that when I noticed you were following me first, I was like, whoa, wait, oh no, that's a lot. And then I was like, well, I'm going to just reach out to him many years later and say like, hey, can you come on my podcast? Because why not? And then I was a total geek in doing that. But going back to the fangirling part, I'm serious. Like my sister and we never got along. She's the closest in age to me. The only time we ever got along was when we were watching Kids in the Hall in 1988. Yeah.
That's nice. I'm glad we could force a little break in the fighting.
Right? Bringing the world together one comedy sketch at a time.
Yeah.
But so for me, like I still think of so many sketches in like my daily life, like in just general daily life for me, or anytime I have coleslaw to this day. It's 30 Helens agree. And every time I'm opening the coleslaw, I'm like, coleslaw deserves another chance.
Yeah. And I gotta say, coleslaw is one of my two favorite foods.
It is?
Yeah, coleslaw and spaghetti. Those are my two favorite foods.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
that's not necessarily at the same time, but I will. I'll have a side of coleslaw with a plate of spaghetti.
No,
so there you go. Oh, sure I will. Yeah.
Wait, I'm sorry.
I'll have coleslaw as just a late night snack.
Okay, that's one thing. And my daughter, she loves coleslaw and she will eat it all the time, including when like she wakes up, food like sleepwalking, she eats too. Coleslaw is good, I will give you that. But coleslaw on the side of spaghetti, I'm sorry.
They're just they don't go well together, but they're both my favorites. So
so like on your birthday, you're like, I'm going to have my favorite things that I'm going to have.
Yeah.
That is interesting, but it also, I don't know, because maybe Canadians are not known for their, Epicurean expertise necessarily. So maybe that's
it's worse. I'm of English origin, so
oh god,
my mom was English, so food enjoying food doesn't come naturally to me. It's food is something that you just get through. You get stiff upper lip, eat the damn Yorkshire pudding, and don't complain.
I lived in Ireland for a minute in my life, and the first time I went to anywhere that had breakfast, they had pudding on the menu, and I was like, "Oh, I like pudding."
Yeah.
And then that's not what came on my plate.
Oh, I know. Oh no. I remember my first time having breakfast in London. And ordering, eggs and toast. And I neglected to specify, I don't want my toast fried.
Oh, do they cook it really well done?
They fried it. They fried the toast in bacon fat.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Was it But was it bad? I mean, I don't know. I
Oh
don't eat
no, it's
bacon.
delicious. It was just, it just took a year off my life. That's
Right,
all.
exactly. Every meal is just
Yeah.
chipping away. Well, I remember when we got off the plane in Shannon Airport, and you're like jet lagged, everything feels weird. And my now ex-husband was there, and he's like, "We want something to eat," and I was like, "I want a coffee and a bagel. That's what I want." I said, "Coffee and a bagel." And he comes back, and I'm like, "What is that?" And he's like, "That's a scone." I'm like, "What is a scone?" He's like, "This is what they have here. They don't have bagels." And then he hands me my cup, and I'm like, "What is that?" And he's like, "It's tea."
Yeah.
Where am I? Get me back on the plane
Yeah.
immediately, because this is not, no. But I got
Yeah.
used to it, sort of. But still, a bagel and a coffee is way better. No offense to anybody.
No,
Yeah.
yeah. Let me put my phone on do not disturb.
Oh, sorry.
There we
Yeah.
go. There we go. There, I won't keep getting
Just fair
texts.
warning, my kids end school at 3, and no matter what day of the week it is or where they're supposed to be going, they will call me. So something's going to blow up here. So I'll turn on
Yeah.
mute, but it will still blow up nonetheless. And my kids will be like, "What are you doing?
And
Where are you?"
because
Yeah,
they're on your VIP list, right?
exactly. That's
Yeah, I
exactly right.
know. Yeah, my daughter. Yeah, my daughter. If my daughter calls, yeah, it'll come through. But
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, my kids will be like, "I don't care who you're talking to. I need $5. I want to buy an empanada." It's like, "What? This is not an emergency." Um, but back to kids
back
in the
to
hall. Yeah.
yeah,
Here's the thing about kids in the hall too. There are a million things about it. It holds up still, which is not true.
good.
Do you think so? Do you ever go back and watch the old sketches?
Very rarely. Sometimes it's when I'm trying to remember one for if we're going to perform it. Um, but yeah, very rarely watch the old show. Although it's yeah, I got to say every once in a while, I've watched a little bit, and I'm always surprised. I'm always surprised there's so many sketches I've forgotten about.
Yeah.
Whenever I do watch an episode, that there are that I go, oh, I don't remember this sketch, and I wrote it.
Wow.
Um, yeah, but yeah, I think it's nice. I guess one thing is like we never did topical stuff, which was by design,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't do parody, which would also like sort of lock you into a certain time frame. So I
Yeah.
guess we kind of decided really early on that we were gonna just write about sort of general human interaction would be our subject matter.
But in a weird way, it was ahead of its time too, because some of the like general subject matter, was then stuff that people didn't really talk about. You know what I mean? There's this like sort of dark component to so many of particularly the parents, which I always found so fascinating, coming from a situation where my mom was at least, I mean, at best, not ideal. So that was always something that really resonated with me. And that was a really interesting choice, progressive sort of choice, forward-leaning choice.
Well, we our parents did us the favor of all being awful. Uh,
It's
so
awesome. Good job.
yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, to be fair, my mom wasn't awful. She was just English. So it was she had an actual impairment. But my dad was awful. Most of the kids, we all had like terrible dads, alcoholic dads, abusive dads, and or distant moms.
Yeah.
So it was we all had just dreadful parents. You know.
And thus the great comedy was born.
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of we were one of the things we could bond over finding our childhoods hilarious as opposed to being thinking them sad.
Which is interesting because it's sort of like, as the child, of abuse, these are the things that you kind of have to do to cope, right? I mean, not to get too
Yeah.
deep and like, introspective, but still there is some truth to that.
Yeah, well, and there's an inherent absurdity to awful behavior.
Mhm.
There's like it's like terrible like in fiction, terrible people are always so interesting, and
Mm.
often hilarious. Like W.C. Fields, his whole persona was being awful,
Mhm.
and it was hilarious. Same with Groucho Marx, really.
Yeah.
He was a terrible person, his comic character.
Right. But you're right, the absurdity of it, because sometimes you're like, how are you this way? And it's sort of inherently funny in its awfulness, which is a strange thing,
Yeah,
but it's true.
Yeah, well, because it goes against how you're what is expected, what is supposed to be the norm of behavior. So that things that I guess diverge from what you're expecting are usually funnier than the people who behave as they should.
Yeah.
It's hard to get a lot of laughs on someone who just does the right thing.
Right, exactly.
You know?
It's, oh, you're okay. Yeah, you're crossing all
Yeah,
those T's and dotting all those I's. That's fun. But like that's the other thing too about Kids in the Hall was that so much of the comedy, all of it really, was so completely unexpected. Sometimes I know you guys started as troops, as two troops that kind of came together. And where the origin point is for some of this stuff, it's just like it's kind of mind blowing. Like for instance, where does the head crusher guy come from?
well,
Where's
that
it
yeah
come
that
from?
yeah well that was Kevin and Mark. I guess the story I hear, and they could be lying. They usually are.
Mm.
But that they were out on a double date back before we had a TV show, and with two women that were not liking them at all. Um, and so in the middle of the date, Mark just started doing that. Like he just started going, "I'm caressing your head," at the people that are on a date with. And Kevin remembered that years later and said, "Oh, that was funny. We should do that." And so it was Mark's original instinct, and then it was Kevin that remembered it.
Oh my
It's
God.
often Kevin's job is to remember things.
Really?
Yeah,
That's his job.
yeah, yeah.
What's what's yours?
I'm my job is to actually my job used to be to actually remember the dialogue um, from all of our sketches because when we used to do our club show, we never wrote anything down because we'd write an hour of material every week, so we didn't have time to write it down and script it. We would just sort of work it all out on our feet and then perform it. So we never had scripts or anything, and I was the only one that could ever remember how the sketches went when we like months later would decide we'd repeat one.
Which is funny because my favorite sketch of all time is Citizen Kane. Like that is, I mean,
Yeah,
honest to God, again, I probably play that sketch in my head once a week, just randomly. I have no idea why. I'll just play it in my head once a week, and you and you're the one to remember the dialogue in the group, but in the sketch,
yeah, that's
right?
yeah. Well, and that sketch, that sketch took as long to write as it takes to perform.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Kevin and I wrote that we met with Kevin Scott and I. We met at Le Select Sandwich on Dundas Street to write, and we wrote that sketch. Yeah, literally, Kevin and I just sort of improvised it, and it was pretty much we never changed a word of it after that. And then we wrote another sketch with Scott that was so bad we actually did try to do it on the TV show, but we did it in the early performance, and then by the second show we pulled it from the running order.
That's hysterical. I mean, that's the thing about like improv. It's just, I mean, it's Henry Winkler. You and I were talking about him really quickly before we started recording. I mean, Henry Winkler did improv too, and it builds up like a totally different skill set that you can do that you can just kind of create an entire scene on the fly and never have to really like hash it out. It's just something that you can do.
Yeah, well, it's when it works. Yeah, it's great,
Yeah.
and no, and it's true. And well, like, the thing is, it gets you that it breaks down the sensor inside. It breaks down that part of you that goes, no, no, not that, not that, and where you just say the next thing, and then you just follow idea after idea after idea, and sometimes it's terrible, but
Mhm.
sometimes it gives you. I think it gives you people that study improv. I think it gives them a speed at writing that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Right, like
That,
an
you know,
efficiency, I guess, right?
yeah, yeah, you learn to sort of go stream of consciousness, and then you can go back and fix things later.
Right. And I was watching the documentary, and in the beginning of, when you guys were together and doing these improv shows live, I mean, Bruce McCullough said like there was a lot of failure. There was
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Although really, not
as
as
much as
much as
he said.
Bruce thinks. But Bruce just thought every sketch that wasn't his was a failure. Is the and still does. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
funny.
Because there would always be that thing where we'd go, we'd do the show, and then at the end of the show, everyone would think that their sketches were the ones that were hits.
Really?
And usually, I'd say we had a remarkable success rate on those club shows. Like we rarely ever bombed on.
I mean, what an incredible thing that must have been for people to behold, because I mean, the energy alone had to have been, I mean, the people weren't doing stuff like that.
No, no, especially in those days, it was because the whole notion of like alt comedy didn't exist yet.
Right.
And in Toronto, there was basically, there was Yuck Yucks, which was the stand-up club, and then there was Second City Theater in Toronto, and that was kind of it. There was Second City and Yuck Yucks, and then there was a whole bunch of people uh, copying Second City, a whole bunch of sketch review shows all over town. Where they would have a piano player and they'd sing songs about the mayor, and there was it's sort of punky young men. We all thought we hated all that, um, and we decided we wanted to do a show that was less polite, where we'd actually swear on stage or get drunk on stage. And
Really?
we did, we just sort of didn't follow any of the rules of performance that we were told were essential at the time.
And that, I mean, that's really truly groundbreaking, but it makes me ask this question, which is like, who were the comedians or the like shows you were watching that made you, want to pursue comedy? What did you think was funny growing up?
Oh, well, growing up, I mean, it's probably one of the first comedians I really remember watching was oddly Jerry Lewis as a
Uh-huh.
kid. Like I loved Jerry Lewis movies. I'm talking like when I was like 4 or 5 years old,
Hmm.
I would I would try to go out and do pratfalls that I saw Jerry Lewis doing. So I would go do tumbles down the flight of stairs,
Oh my
you
God.
know,
Yeah, but at four, you don't know what you're
or
doing.
yeah, yeah,
You're literally just throwing yourself down the stairs.
yeah. And so I would just, do it for a laugh. And but then quickly I think I also was like watching Monty Python from the time I was like 6 7 years old. But I was also a huge fan of the Marx Brothers, Laurel and Hardy. And then as I got a little older, I mean, my family, we were kind of, the only thing we did together was watch comedy in my family.
Hmm.
um well, and hockey, we all watched hockey together.
Right, that's right.
But yeah, but we, watching things like All in the Family and MASH and Mary Tyler Moore Show. I mean, those were the family gatherings when I was a
Hmm.
kid. um
And those are great shows. I mean, comedically, those are
yeah.
great shows. Yeah.
Oh, great. I think they're, yeah, great, amazing pieces of art.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some of the greatest sort of cultural achievements of the 20th century, I'd say.
And definitely boundary pushing as well. Same as,
Yeah,
you guys are.
yeah. No, I think, um, yeah. I mean, I think Norman Lear, you could, put him up there with Henrik Ibsen, as a writer. The things that he did.
Yeah.
You know,
And
I
you
mean, he was.
definitely get a sense of I mean, the Monty Python thing I can see because sort of that same energy, where you're not sure if everything is really scripted or if it isn't scripted, but that I could see that as well.
Yeah, well, Python was just the anarchy of Python.
Hmm.
I think appealed to all of us, and to the extent that one of the main things we talked about was how important was that we should not be anything like Python.
Right.
Because there were things like, because we love Python. When we started doing our comedy, we pretty much said, okay, all of our sketches have to have beginning, middles, and ends.
Hmm.
Because Python, they didn't end their sketches ever.
Right.
you
Right.
know in
Right.
fact, to the point, like if they ever did do an actual punchline to a sketch, they would highlight it. They would have a big like sign coming out that says punchline,
Yeah.
and they would mock the fact that they did a punchline.
Right.
you know so when we were doing ours, we said, well, we can't do that. We can't do our our we had basically went back to more like a Carol Burnett structure of sketch comedy. you know
Yeah,
but
and
just
that's interesting too, because that for me too as a kid was always on, and it was a show that I mean that was very traditional sketch comedy, but it did
yeah,
beginning, middle, and end. But oh, it was a
Uh,
great punchline.
and it was great. No, and the writing on that show was fantastic, and they were such great performers. And
Yeah.
so yeah, Carol Burnett was a big influence on me, and I think probably on all of us. I think we all grew up watching Carol Burnett, uh, you know, uh, which was a thrill. I actually played poker once with Harvey Korman. So I was very excited by that.
Oh my God, that sounds incredible.
Yeah, which is really cool. So I
See, were
got,
you having like a moment like I'm having with you? Or you're like,
oh my God, it was. There's this great guy, Norby Walters, had this poker game that had been running forever, and I got invited to be to be a part of Young Hollywood at the table back when I was Young Hollywood. So back when I was doing news radio, Norby started inviting me out, and it was like, it'd be like me and John Favreau, and that generation would be the young guys at the table.
Mm.
But I got to play with Harvey Korman. I got to play with Connie Stevens, Charles Durning, and and oh my God, I'm blanking on one of my favorite actors of all time, Jim Rockford.
Who's Jim Rockford? I don't know who that is.
The Rockford Files. Oh
Oh,
my
the
God.
Rockford Files. Okay. See now,
James Garner. Oh my God.
James Garner. I'm like,
James
okay,
Garner.
James Garner, I know.
That's a mental problem I have with proper names.
Yeah, I have lots of mental problems.
But yeah, I got to play with like James Garner, was one of my favorite actors of all time. Because I grew up watching the Rockford Files and watching Maverick, in old reruns.
Yeah.
So who else? God, got just Joe Bologna, just amazing people. We're all in this poker game.
And is the fact that you're playing poker kind of an icebreaker at least, or that you have this it's like having something to do with your hands, like if you're nervous?
Yeah, and then we were playing 7-card stud, which is the most boring game on earth. And I'm a terrible poker player too. So but as I said, it was just to meet all these amazing people, like all these like people that were heroes of mine.
Yeah.
It was it was one of my favorite. Yeah, and I was definitely starstruck by all of those people.
I'm sure. But
Yeah.
you were young Hollywood. Young
Yeah.
Hollywood.
Yeah,
Now a bunch of people would sit at a table with you and be like, "Oh my God, I'm
yeah, I
sick."
know he's still alive.
I have no idea. Is that the guy from Bug's Life? Wait, it
Yeah.
is, right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Say something from the movie.
Yeah.
Say something from the movie.
Yeah.
Well, for me, explaining to my kids, because like I was I tell them all this stuff where I'm like, I can't believe this is my life. I can't believe I get to do this stuff. This is like surreal. And they've known about the opportunity to talk to you since the first time you answered my ridiculous DM, which was just really silly. And so this morning, I was like, guys, today's the day I'm going to interview Dave Foley. And they was like, who's that again? I was like, oh, remember the guy from Bug's Life? And he's like, oh.
That's the same thing. My daughter says the same thing.
Really?
Who are you again, Dad?
Oh, geez. Wow. Yeah. That's a daughter's job.
Yeah.
Yeah. They got to keep you humble. Like,
yeah. Which I think is a terrible job. I think
they're supposed to worship you.
Yeah.
Feel like you put enough in that till that you should be getting worship now.
Oh, I know. Well, I used to have to like my daughter when she was a tween, like every tween in America, binge watched every episode of Friends on Netflix. It was on Netflix. I don't know if your kids did that.
They're a little younger.
They're a little younger. Yeah,
there's tweens now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when she was a tween, she's now 20, almost 21. Like every kid in the world seemed to be watching Friends all of a sudden. And of course, every time she'd be watching it, I go, hon, Dad had a show at the same time as this. If you ever wanted to watch that.
Ew, gross. Why would I want to do that? Wait, were you on Friends? Did you know any of the actors on Friends?
Yeah. That at least I could tell her that. That was impressed. Said, I know all those guys.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, now you're a little bit cool. But yeah. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, like, no offense again to anybody, Friends was fine, perfectly fine show, show. But if you were to ask me, what's funnier than the other thing, not that it's a competition, but I mean, Friends never made me laugh in a memorable, like hold on to it for the rest of my life kind of way, like Kids in the Hall did. So for me
Oh,
anyway, well, I mean, I'm sure other people would argue something else, but for me,
yeah.
that's still very much true.
No, no, I'll take that compliment. I'm very, yeah, I mean, I'm very proud of Kids in the Hall,
Yeah.
you know.
And
Oh, and News Radio after that. I was very proud of that too. Yeah.
right. And that's another thing. That's one of those shows that people, it's like when you ask people, and I saw this, I think on your Twitter, when you ask you like, what are the most sort of memorable, underrated comedy shows of all time? It's one of those that people are like, oh my God, News Radio. How did I not put that on my, how long did that show run for? Ran for a while.
We did 5 years,
Wow.
but we did 5 years, but the guy in charge of scheduling at NBC hated the show, so he kept trying to kill it. And so he kept moving the show every time we'd get up into hit territory, he'd move the show again. So we had like 8 time slots in 5 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's terrible. What a cast. I mean,
Yeah.
parking my feelings on Joe Rogan aside, the rest of the cast
Yeah.
it's truly remarkable. And rest in peace, Phil Hartman, who's a legend, but there's an
Yeah.
incredible cast.
It was a great cast. And Joe was great on News
Mhm.
Radio. Very funny.
I'm sure.
Yeah. And look, I mean, we also had Andy, so,
Right. Right.
I mean, much more problematic, and then yeah,
That's
but yeah,
true.
more Tyranny and Steve Root and Vicky and Candy Alexander. I mean, yeah, it's like, just there was also just a great bunch of people to hang out with, even Andy at the time.
Hmm.
Um, we all had so much fun together. Like we were like we never, like nobody ever wanted to go home when we were making those shows.
That's cool. One of the things that I also learned about you that I didn't know that kind of stems from what you're talking about in your relationship or friendship with Joe Rogan is this. I had no idea about the whole UFO thing. I had no idea that you had a UFO podcast. I had no idea how often you talk about UFOs or all of this stuff because this is fascinating to me because I'm always riveted by anything related to this topic.
Yeah,
So I've heard you say that one of I may should just let you say it. Okay, let me just say this. You have a UFO podcast and
I
it's called
do. Yes.
Really, right? With
Yeah.
Tim and Dave, or Dave and Tim.
Tom and Dave. Yeah.
Tom and Dave. Okay, Joe. There you go.
Yeah.
See, I told you I have name missions
Yeah.
things too.
Me too.
But
Yeah.
tell
It's
me
real.
about
It's
it.
really with Tom and Dave. Yeah, and it's it's and again, it's also weirdly, that's one of the areas where I get starstruck still. Like I remember we went to as a result, we went to something called the Soul Foundation Symposium at Stanford University that Gary Nolan put on, who's a molecular biologist. So I was up there, and all these giants of the UFO world were there, and I was totally starstruck by that.
That's funny.
Yeah, I was there. Like my ex-wife and is our producer on the podcast. So the three of us are up there, and I just kept going, "Do you know who that is? That's Russell Targ. Oh my God, Russell Targ. Oh, Hal Puthoff is here. Chuck Valet is here." But yeah, the UFO thing was one of those things. Like I don't know if you said you're interested in the subject, or
Yeah. No, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I could tell you real quick when you're my story, when you sort of tell your
Oh no,
arc.
tell me your story. Then I'll.
Okay. Well, okay, real quick, because this is really about me. I mean, you're on my
Yeah,
podcast so that I
yeah.
can talk about myself. That's kind of how this works. So, no, you're also old enough to remember this. When I think it was probably about 11, I had my first job. I know that sounds crazy, but I had my first job.
Yeah.
I was under the books. I was working at it was a crossover of an Irish goods and teddy bear store. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And so we never had any business. And so I would sit there and read all weekend long. And one of the books I read was Contact. I think it was called Contact, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it had like
Yeah, that's that you mean the book by what's his name?
I don't remember his name, but it's not
Carl
Ron
Sagan.
Hubbard.
No,
Is
it's
it
Carl
Carl
Sagan,
Sagan?
right?
I'm not sure. It was the one with that iconic kind of like white, that egg shape, like elongated alien face.
Are you thinking of Communion?
Communion. That's it.
That's
Communion.
the Whitley Strieber, yeah.
Okay, sorry. I'm mixing up my alien movies now.
Contact was the Carl Sagan book that they made
Okay.
into a movie with Jodie
Jodie
Foster.
Foster. Okay, yeah. See the name thing. I'm doing it too.
Yeah,
Communion. That's what I was
yeah,
reading. So I think that was around like 84. Maybe I'm not somewhere in
yeah.
the
I think so. Yeah, I can't remember.
so sorry, Communion, right. And I
Hmm.
read it in a weekend because I was absolutely riveted by it. And then I had my best friend Karen read it. And then we became obsessed with seeing things because we were like, I want to see something. So we lived in Sussex County, New Jersey, which is basically like West Virginia version here. It's very open and rural. And she lived on a big farm and she had huge starry sky, and so we were just sitting there one night like hoping and waiting for something to happen, like we were going to will this thing to happen. And sure enough, this like orange streak just goes across the sky. That wasn't a shooting star. We'd seen a million of those. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't the size of anything we'd ever seen. We're both like, did you just? And she's like, uh-huh. And I was like, wait, what was that? And we had no idea. So my dad came to pick me up. I told him, I was like, you're crazy, that didn't happen, whatever. I go to my 11-year-old job the next day and the radio's playing, and the radio announcer's like, all these people are calling in. They all saw this really strange, unidentifiable object last night, and we've checked with the local airports. We've asked in the news. No one knows, no record of it, but like hundreds of people were calling in to say that they'd seen this thing, and the thing I saw. So from that point on, I was like, okay, this is great. I really do believe that's what we saw. And so it's always captured my interest and a little bit of fear and apprehension as well. So that's sort of my story. And that's why I do believe 100%, but I don't have anything other than that personally to kind of go on.
Yeah, there is a lot more. Excuse me. But yeah, well, like in particular, like the Hudson Valley region is like one of the most active places on Earth for UFO sightings, and
I didn't know
continues to
that.
be.
Why?
Um, well, a lot of it. Well, there's two nuclear power plants in the area, and a lot of UFO sightings seem to be linked to nuclear power plants or nuclear weapons installations.
Oh.
Yeah, and so I mean, it's weird because I mean, I was always interested in when I was a little kid. I watched this TV series called UFO, which is a British show set in the far future of 1983. And it was cool. It was very futuristic. All the people wore jumpsuits, and all the cars had gull wing doors, and so it was and there were these sort of conical shaped, UFOs that were constantly attacking Earth, and they were being fought off by this secret organization. So that was like my first introduction to the notion of UFOs, and then I was sort of interested in it throughout my life, and would like hear the stories, in the 70s, there were all the stories, and then of course Close Encounters came out, and
Oh yeah.
that drew a lot of interest to the subject. And then but it would go like how much I would pay attention would go up and down through life. And then in like 97, when I was doing news radio, the Phoenix lights happened, which was like one of the largest mass sightings on record, where like over like a 3-hour period, a huge sort of triangular shaped or delta shaped craft slowly traveled over Arizona, over the city of Phoenix, like over, and it's tracked over like a 200-mile path.
Hmm.
And witnesses were saying it was about the size of a football field.
Hmm.
And this went this happened in 97. Again, and I was making news radio, and Joe Rogan and I at the time, we talked about it quite a bit. We talked about UFOs in general and aliens. And the government's explanation for it was just ridiculous. They said they were illumination flares dropped by the military. And you go, okay, well, I absolutely believe that the military did go up and drop illumination flares so that they could later say it was illumination flares. But that doesn't explain thousands of people who saw a solid craft flying over Phoenix. And then eventually it came out that even the governor of Arizona, Fife Symington, was somebody who witnessed it, and he was a pilot, and he looked at it and he knew that was not a human bit of technology.
Oh.
Right. So that got me, interested. I didn't know about the Fife Symington thing till years later, but what's up? My dog is staring at me. You have to go outside?
Oh no.
Hold on 1 second while I open my patio
Dog,
door.
dog duty. I get it.
Just take 1 second.
Dogs happen. Because I know you talk about this, but I don't remember this. And that may be
There
a
we go.
little bit of my conditioning because I don't remember the Phoenix Lights.
No, well, that's the thing. It's
Yes, I do.
yeah, it was big. It was in the news for quite a while
I
until,
do
of course,
this.
until the press, took the government's explanation, said, "Oh, let's ignore it now." You remember it now?
Yeah, that's such a trip because the social conditioning component that I know you're going to talk about that I know that I didn't remember this, but now looking at it and then it just seemed to disappear from my mind.
Yeah, well, that is the social conditioning, is that the government very cleverly and carefully created an atmosphere where
Is the dog back?
People, yes, you can hear his toenails clicking.
It needs to come back in.
Yeah, no, I've left the door open. He can come and go.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say my dog, she'll do that. She'll go outside and then she's immediately back at the door scratching to come back in.
Yeah, no, that's just him walking around. He's the noisiest toenails on earth.
Sorry.
And he's got these weird little legs that he drags forward as he walks. So it's like
he's giving himself a manicure.
So you hear it as every stride is way louder than it need be. Yeah. There he goes outside again.
He wants to make everyone know where he is at all times.
And he comes up and he gives me this look. Speaking of influences, he comes up and looks at me with this Buster Keaton face. And he looks like Buster Keaton. Yeah. So he comes up. So
you have to write a children's book about your dog at some point, please.
My dog, the reincarnation of Buster.
Okay, yeah. So these lights, this made you interested, and you were radio.
It made me think seriously about it, and think seriously about especially when the press dropped it because they heard this. It's I guess around that same time there was also like a big sighting at Chicago O'Hare Airport that got news coverage for a couple of days, and then the press dropped it. But so that I took that pretty seriously, and then a couple of years later, the French put out something called the Cometa Report, which was a joint study done by the military, police department, psychologists, scientists, and studying the UFO problem in France. And at the end of their study, they put out this report called the Cometa Report, in which they basically said UFOs are real, and the most likely explanation is an extraterrestrial. And so I thought, that seems important.
Right.
And again, zero traction in the media.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Yeah, no one does, especially in America. No one does. Oddly enough, a woman who I would later become friends with, Leslie Kane, was one of the only people that wrote about the Cometa Report when it came out. As a journalist back in, I guess it was 2003 when it came out. And then again, so that got me thinking. But then it was only like about 10 years ago, I saw a documentary called Out of the Blue by James Fox. And it was the first time I'd seen something that was kind of comprehensively covered sort of historical cases, interviewed really credible military and government witnesses from all over the world. And it was narrated by Peter Coyote, so that made it sound serious.
Right.
And it was like a pretty low budget documentary that this guy James Fox made. But it was great, and it just covered a lot of historical stuff that I didn't know about, and a lot of really credible stories and witnesses that I wasn't aware of. And that got me going. Oh, and after watching that like late at night by myself, it was one of these where I went, oh boy, I need to really take this seriously. Pardon me, I'm very phlegmy. And then, so then I started looking for other sources of information. I started like trying to find I found like podcasts that seemed serious, uh, a guy named Ryan Sprague and Alejandro Rojas and Martin Willis, people like that. And then, and I just started looking into it. Then I found the book that Leslie Kean had written all about. I can never remember the title of it, but it's like uh, fighter pilots, government officials, blah, go on the record about UFOs. It's by Leslie, who later wrote the 2017 New York Times article with Ralph Blumenthal about UFOs. But so I read that book and just started sort of, going back and taking all the things that I kind of dismissed as being crazy before and looking at them again and more seriously and going, oh wow, this is a way bigger issue than I was thinking it was,
I have so many
and
questions, but why do you think, I mean, I could speculate, but why doesn't the government want us talking about, and is the press complicit, or is it that they just don't think we have the capacity for these stories? Because I feel like we waited our whole lives for confirmation of aliens, and then we get it all the time, and they're like, nope, moving on.
Yeah. Well, I think, the government, I mean, it's just, people, it's just conjecture, but I think it's pretty good conjecture. Is that one of the reasons is that it's not something they can really readily admit to, because they'd be having to admit that there's something flying in our airspace that we have no defenses against. And that's not something the military likes to admit to. It's certainly not something, and the governments, they don't really want to admit to the notion that there's perhaps a superior species on Earth, because maybe people won't take our governments as seriously. If, and there's also, I mean, recently we had a guy named David Grush came forward as a whistleblower and saying that the U.S. also, not only do UFOs exist, not only are they real, but now the story is out that the government has programs to retrieve UFOs and to reverse engineer them.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that's a big story.
Yeah. Whoa.
And one of the reasons that that's secret is because we're worried that another country will figure it out first. And like whatever country figures out how this technology works, and basically, that the Russians have also retrieved UFOs and have been trying to reverse engineer them. The Chinese have. So they're and whoever figures out how it works, it's sort of game over for everyone else.
Right. Like there's no borders in space that it's like you can't claim that, because that one is part of, see right here, that's part of the United States. It shows right here on this map.
Yeah. And if if the Chinese have technology that we have zero defenses against, then they will just do what they want to do. And we, and our system of government will end.
It's interesting. So then also that begs the question that what are they doing when they're here, and why are they here? And they're just observing us because they're not interacting really, right? And why do they only sort of reveal themselves in certain situations versus others? Like, how come they're not just either all out all the time, or is there one that's just like drunk and they accidentally left the lights on? Like,
yeah, well, they are interacting with us. If you look at the abductee phenomenon.
Oh, right.
Like there's,
and Communion talks about that too.
Yeah, well, it's all about Whitley.
Right.
Whitley, we actually had Whitley on the podcast just a little while ago.
Don't tell them I got their name wrong.
It's all right.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's possibly millions of people have been abducted. and there's something very strange going on. I mean, you had some like Harvard's psychiatrist John Mack, the head of Harvard psychiatry, took the subject very seriously and interviewed a lot of abductees, and basically came to the conclusion these people are perfectly sane. They've had an experience that is real and and traumatizing, and we need to figure it out.
Hmm.
And now that I'd say most people like in the UFO field now think that it's use the term non-human intelligence instead of extraterrestrial, because we don't know that it's necessarily from somewhere else.
Hmm.
There's the notion that it's just always been here, that there's just a superior species that's always been on Earth with us, interacting with us, that may be the source of all of our religions.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah, that maybe, it is one of those things where you go, oh, well, maybe the Greek gods actually existed,
Right.
that was the Greeks' way of interpreting what they were encountering,
Right.
is they invented these gods. And then we all, and throughout history, different cultures interacting with, um, you know, uh, I guess we call them UAPs now, the unexplained phenomenon, um, have all interpreted them as some sort of gods, and their their interactions with us as miracles. And
Hmm.
because as Arthur C. Clarke said, any significantly advanced technology would be indistinguishable from magic.
Right.
So we're now, I mean, we're interacting with this technology now, and we're of course viewing it as from a scientific mindset,
Hmm.
in terms of craft, and and trying to determine what species this is or what's going on. But in the past, yeah, naturally you would ascribe it to something magical and
Hmm.
supernatural.
And do you think it's a commentary sort of on society as a whole that these things are not like, oh my God, you guys, there was this story and about spaceships and this thing that I think as a kid, I mean, even as a young adult, but this would have been the biggest. I mean, how many movies were made where this was the biggest news that could ever be
Yeah.
on the whole planet? And now,
Well,
as a society, we're like, oh, they don't know. Those fighter pilots don't know what that thing that's spinning is doing or what it is. And oh, okay. Anyway, did you guys hear
yeah.
what Trump was doing?
Yeah. Well, basically people just go, well, I heard that was debunked.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
That was debunked, right? I don't need to pay attention. You
Right,
know,
right,
that's all crazy.
right.
Well, I think it does speak to how, the notion. I mean, we think we're smart, and we think we have free will. Um,
Hmm.
but I mean, it's pretty obvious that we can easily be manipulated. And like you said, is the press complicit? My view is they aren't complicit, but they are victims, like the rest of us, of a really well executed social conditioning program. Um, that this, I always refer to like Noam Chomsky's book, The Manufacturing Consent. Where basically all you have to do is create an environment where some things sensible people talk about and think about, and some things they don't. And
Hmm.
once you create that environment, you don't have to censor, you don't have to monitor anything, because it's self-perpetuating at that point. The press will write dismissive articles about UFOs because they're sensible people who know that it isn't real.
Hmm.
And because they know it isn't real, they won't look at any of the evidence that it is real. Same thing with the scientific community. They know that what these craft are doing is impossible. And since they know it's impossible, they don't need to look at the data showing that it's happening. And so, and I think Chomsky also said the easiest people to manipulate are intellectual elites,
Huh.
because they have the most at stake with staying in the community of
Right.
intellectual elites. They don't want to be excluded,
Hmm.
you know. Um, I remember in the book, I remember in Chomsky, one of the examples, God, 25, 30 years ago, I guess at least 25 years ago, that he put forward of the media uh, complying with the conditioning of what you think about and what you don't think about, was going back to the Middle East when there was a potential agreement on the table between the Palestinian Authority and Israel, and the Palestinian Authority rejected it, and everyone was saying there the PLO just will not accept success, will not take a win. And Noam Chomsky pointed out, but at the same time, not one newspaper published an actual map of the West Bank.
Mm-hmm.
And even today, when you watch the coverage of what's going on in Gaza and in Israel, they still keep showing the West Bank as this big block of blue space on the map.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that it looks like a virus, if you look at the actual map of it, that it's all just these little segments, little squiggles of land that are Palestinian land, and all of it in the middle of it all is all Israeli occupation, and there's no contiguous land in the West Bank.
Right.
And Chomsky pointed out, not one newspaper, and to this day, not one newspaper publishes the real map of the West Bank, because that's not what sensible people talk about.
I mean, it would explain that, there's this two-sided slippery slope about people seeking information sources that are not, the traditional news sources we've always sort of gone to and trusted.
Yeah.
Increasingly, that's becoming the case where people are going outside of that. And that is a double-edged sword, because you then have people who are both bad actors and intentionally spreading misinformation and disinformation. And then you have people who don't even mean to be spreading disinformation and misinformation, and people are putting too much trust in them. But at the same time, the gatekeeping that is in place within traditional media, I mean, to speak to your point, also related to maps, but also this particular topic, which is like, yeah, but see, now I feel like I should have been seeking alternative sources of information because I wasn't being served. Well, what you were saying really is more reflective of reality. And so that's how we kind of get to this place now where you can see where people are like, I don't trust mainstream media, so I'm going to seek other sources.
Yeah, and that's the trouble, is that, I mean, the truth is mainstream media still has a better system.
Yeah.
Like when it's working properly.
Right.
Of the notions of multiple sources and checking your cross corroborating, and coming out and admitting when you're wrong. Those are the things that are supposed to be how press works.
Yeah.
This is the rules of journalism are good rules, and they should work. But it's true. I mean, it's like, I mean, we've had far too many examples. I mean, the run up to the Iraq War, where and again, I have a slightly different perspective because I was in Canada, and we were watching it from below and going, why isn't anyone asking any questions? Like we'd watch the American press and just go, why is no one's asking anything? Why is everyone just saying, oh, all the press is just piling on and going, yes, we must defeat Saddam.
Yeah.
He is a threat. And I'd go, well, wait a second. No, he was your guy weeks ago. You've been propping him up and supporting him, so it's amazing, and again, it's not a conspiracy. It's just that there are clear things that you talk about and that you don't. And if you talk about the things that no one else is talking about, you'll be ostracized by your peers. And and then there's also practical matters, like that journalists, especially now, are increasingly dependent on the government for all their sources of news, because all the newsrooms have shrunk.
Yeah.
Every newspaper has laid off, most of their reporters. And TV stations, same thing. It's and the consolidation of media. There's no local media anymore. There used to be local newspapers and local TV stations. Those don't exist.
Now.
Yeah, nothing. So it's and it's more expensive to do news. And it used to be news was siloed from those concerns. The news was like the network. When we had 3 networks, they were all legally compelled to have news as a part of their license.
Mm-hmm.
like when they were originally licensed, when TV was invented,
Mm-hmm.
was you have to provide a public service to maintain this license. And so news departments didn't have to make money.
Right.
They were essential. You had to do it.
Like Jim.
Um, yeah, yeah, it had to happen. So you just did it. But you know,
Mm,
but is this? But now, uh, you know, the resources are so, and because they've so much of the income has been stripped away by the internet, and and that we haven't found an effective way of people just not taking expensive reporting and reposting it for free,
right.
which is a problem.
Oh yeah. Increasingly so.
Yeah. So all of these things, and but then again, on the other hand, we do have people like yourself who are, like just citizens taking the time to ask questions and challenge, accepted realities. Is an amazing development. But of course, that same tool is available to people that want to cause chaos
Mm-hmm.
and confuse issues and turn people against each other. You know, so it's a strange time we're living in.
Oh, indeed. And interestingly, I just want to ask like kind of on that, this idea, because there are so many forces out there seeking to divide us, what's kind of
Yeah.
ironic to me is that there's maybe an opportunity to literally unite the entire globe on this issue because it's one we can all say, impacts us. This,
Yeah.
that's the thing too. It's like in the movies, right? Like that's what happened.
Well, we're seeing it happen in miniature.
Yeah.
Because the people who are getting the information now are in our government.
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting information from whistleblowers within our military.
Mm.
Um, and what's happened is that the UFO issue is the one issue that has harmonious, unanimous, bipartisan support
Hmm.
amongst all the people who have been exposed to it. So you have, for example, Chuck Schumer and Mike Rounds, natural political enemies,
Mm-hmm.
writing, 70-page legislation on disclosure of non-human intelligence. And again, no one in the press is covering it.
I don't know about this.
Yeah, this was Chuck Schumer and Mike Rounds were co-authors of legislation that 24 times uses the term non-human intelligence, that in a very detailed and precise way goes through all the places that UFOs may be hidden, where non-human intelligence, non-human technologies are being hidden, and the programs that have been set up to illegally um, uh, sort of hold these materials and information and keep it secret from congressional oversight, and that they are also siphoning off money from other programs illegally to fund these programs. And so you have, again, two political enemies, people who don't agree on anything, wrote this legislation, and within the Senate committee, which was the Oversight Committee or the Intelligence Committee, I think it was, they wrote this legislation, added it to the NDAA, which is the funding, the official funding for the military,
Mm-hmm.
and it had unanimous support in when in the committees that wrote the legislation,
Because
bipartisan, because they've been in.
they've seen the intelligence.
Yeah, they've seen the intelligence. They've seen the pictures. They've heard the stories from many whistleblowers. I mean, David Grush is the most famous and public one right now, because he did the congressional hearings back in the summer. But we had people like Ryan Graves, who was a fighter pilot off of the East Coast of the United States, who came forward and said that they were encountering UFOs on a daily basis over a 2-year period, as they were getting ready, as they were trying to get their training before going into a battle zone in in the Gulf, and they were having to scrub their training missions, and this was like putting their lives at risk.
Wow.
And then on the West Coast, there was the 2004 Tic Tac encounter with David Fravor and Alex Dietrich, and where they were sent out, where for a week they were tracking these objects coming from above 80,000 feet into restricted American airspace, military airspace, training areas. And they've tracked some of these craft going from 28,000 feet to sea level in 0.78 seconds.
Whoa.
And yeah, so they were tracking these things, and then finally they sent out two fighter pilots, Alex Dietrich and David Fravor, to go have a look.
Yeah.
And they got there and they saw this big sort of a cross-shaped white water disturbance under the water from at 20,000. They could see this big like white water on a clear, calm day. Nothing else disturbing the water except this one area where they had white water. Mm-hmm. And as they got closer, they saw an object above the white water sort of flitting about erratically like this. And they got down to it, and they described it as a 40-foot long Tic Tac shaped object. It looked like a 40-foot long Tic Tac. And David Fravor, who was the commander of all the fighter pilots on the Nimitz carrier group, he's the one there, and he decides he's going to go down and engage with it. So he flies down and starts, he dives down, trying to go down, get close to it. It sees him, reacts to him, and starts mirroring all of his maneuvers in a big circle.
Oh, boy.
So it's mirroring. So he decides he's going to cut across the circle and cut it off. And when he does that, the UFO goes boom, turns at him, and then just disappears in a second.
Oh my God.
And again, on a clear day where they have hundreds of miles of visibility, this thing is gone, out of visual range instantaneously. And this has all been tracked on multiple radar systems, tracked on the radar and in the planes, in the jets, tracked on the Theodore Roosevelt, is that their radar ship, support ship, tracked an airborne radar. So it's all multiple sensors reading this stuff.
There's a stink bug. There's a stink bug in front of me.
Oh, my.
Yeah, go ahead. We were just discussing it off camera for 1 second, off recording for 1 second. Yeah. Something that I said, the reason I started, because if you're watching the video or even listening, actually, I like had a quick jolt of fear because I was so riveted by what Dave was saying, but also because a stink bug jumped onto my ring light at that exact moment where I was really, really freaked out. But this undercurrent thing that keeps playing in my head is this thing I read as a kid, which was that when you're talking about, I call them aliens because I don't know what the language is, but that's why I still call them, and I will change it if it's not correct. But if you were talking about them, that they knew that you were talking about them, and they would then reveal themselves to you in some way, or find you, come visit you, show themselves to you. And I lived in perpetual, constant fear that I saw aliens chasing me or following me, not really chasing. And I said to you, that's ridiculous. And then you said,
no, it isn't.
Okay.
No, in fact, it's not at all uncommon for people who engage in the topic, who seriously sort of think about it and talk about it, and some people, do shows about it. That that engaging with the subject draws it to you, and because that's one of the things that.
Stink bugs are aliens, right, Dave?
Aliens. Stink bugs. They could be. I don't know. They could be scouts.
Right. God,
but I've talked to, and I can say that it's actually happened to me. So, like after about 10 years of sort of publicly discussing the subject, I was with my friend Jeremy Corbell, who I became friends with because I was talking publicly about UFOs. And he made a documentary about Bob Lazar, who was the whistleblower of Area 51 back in '89. And he's also the guy who's released a lot of the the UFO videos that are, in the news all the time lately. And he has a lot of contacts within the military. And so, but he had never seen anything, and I had never seen anything. But we both, and then one night we were out walking his dog out on this country road through some orange groves, and we saw a UFO together. So, and to make it even weirder, we were standing out there, and it was such a beautiful night, and I was looking at all the air traffic off in the distance, the commercial air traffic. And at one point, I just said, tonight would be a great night to see something. Because neither of us had ever seen anything, but we both took the subject very seriously. And about a minute later, Jeremy goes, "Dave, turn around." And I turned around, and then off where I had been watching the commercial air traffic, there was this orangey gold light pulsing in the distance that was about 10 times the size of anything else in the sky. And we stood there silent. We didn't talk at all as this thing circled around this valley we were in, got right in front of us, hung in front of us for about a minute, and then went off behind the mountains. And it was like only after it had gone away. And the only thing Jeremy, at one point, like, I didn't say anything. And at one point, Jeremy out loud goes, "I'm not even going to try to take a picture." Yeah, which is weird because he's the guy who practices getting ready to take pictures of UFOs all the time. He knows all the settings on his phone. He's ready to go if anything should come along. But to someone, he says this out loud. I'm not sure he was saying it to me.
Oh my God.
And I don't say anything.
Why didn't you want to take a picture?
I'll
Okay,
the best I can explain it. So
Okay.
it goes away. It goes behind the mountains, and then Jeremy suddenly goes, "Dude, that was a UFO." And I turn and I go, "Yeah, I think that was." As I said, it was completely silent, and it was like this sort of rounded triangular shape with 3 white lights on the front of it, and it was pulsing this orange light, and then the white lights were pulsing, and it just hung there in front of us for a long time. It was blocking out all the background. There's no way it could be confused with anything else. It was a unique thing.
How big was it? Like, how big was it?
I'd say it's about the size of like a Mack truck.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And and it showed up because I asked for it, which is a weird thing on its own.
Yeah.
And also our reaction to it, neither one of us had any emotional response, like no excitement, no panic, no, we weren't overwhelmed. We both just stood there quietly watching, and neither one of us took a picture of it. And the nearest I can explain it is that the thing we were looking at was in control of how we were responding to it. So I'm guessing when Jeremy said, "I'm not even going to try to take a picture," that was him fighting the impulse. That part of his brain was saying, "I should be taking a picture." But the thing we were watching said, "No."
Wow.
So out loud, I think he's conversing more with the thing than with me.
Holy shit.
And yeah, and so this is, why would this happen? Why would it happen when we're together? And it's, that's the thing, is that more and more you realize that sightings aren't random.
But the story I told you before, my friend Karen and I, like, we were both like, we went out looking. We'd never done that before. We never did it again after that.
Yeah.
And we would like, just keep looking. We'll see something. Hopefully we'll see something. And now I have like super chills all over my body, because I'm like, oh my God, what if we willed it to be there?
Well, that's the thing. It seems to be like that a major component of the UFO experience is something occurring on the level of consciousness. The interaction with these things isn't just visual. It isn't just seeing a machine. That whatever is behind these things, the non-human intelligence that's that's behind the phenomena, is interacting with us on the level of consciousness, which sounds weird, but we're even in our primitive state of science, we're starting to realize that consciousness is more weird than we thought it was. Even like I just watched an amazing 45-minute documentary on YouTube, called "Rethinking Death," put out by forgetting the name of the doctor, but it was his lab at the New York University Hospital, and basically looking at the history of like near-death experiences and looking at all the documentation of it, and basically saying, and this is like the first time I've heard mainstream scientists and medical professionals coming out and saying that near-death experiences are real. Because for decades now, people have been trying to explain it as an illusion, that it's just the brain shutting down and creating these hallucinations. But the truth is that people who are having these experiences are having these experiences at a time when their brains have stopped functioning. And in fact, where their EEGs they're flatlined, they're dead, and they're having visual experiences and they are leaving their bodies, and they're traveling places, both in like they're seeing the medical teams working on their bodies. They're seeing doctors talking to their loved ones, and they're able to recount all these things when they're revived. And in this documentary, they talk about how basically we started, modern medicine started encountering them as soon as they invented CPR. Once they started being able to restart hearts,
right,
they started getting near-death experiences recounted by people that they revived. And then, since then, we've gotten to the point where they can now revive people that have been dead for an hour.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And it's difficult, and they're trying to work on techniques to make it more, to make it work better. Because they found things like people have been dead for an hour, they've been able to revive them, but once they reintroduce blood flow to the brain and oxygen to the brain, it can be toxic to the brain and actually kill the brain. So they've developed new techniques for restarting the brain. And as they've been doing that, they've been getting more and more people coming back after being dead for an hour. And they've actually even changed the term. They've said they don't no longer call it near-death experience. They call it recalled experience of death. And this again, NYU, very serious, not wacky, far out people saying that these people, that these aren't near-death experiences. These are people who have been dead. They've crossed right through the gray zone. They are dead, and they are revived.
I mean, when you think about what we don't know about the brain, and it's like well, we don't know about the bottom of the ocean. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so much, and the idea that, I mean, we have creatures on this earth that have, like dolphins, for instance. They say they have an entire sense, right? That like an emotional sense that the human beings don't even possess.
Yeah.
And the idea that something with so much technology, that the tic tac can disappear in, a second or half a minute, millisecond, that they have that kind of technology, and we are ever, increasing our own capacity for technology with the brain. It's not impossible or implausible even to think that these, not aliens, you said, I forget what the word is, but
you can say aliens. It's
okay,
fine.
I'm going to call them.
I don't think they're as touchy about this sort of
okay,
thing.
good. Just want to make sure I don't offend. I don't want to misname anybody. Yeah. So, but like it's not implausible that they would be able to have technology where they could manipulate yours and your friends' emotional responses, in that, literally mess with your brain in that moment. It's not impossible or implausible to think that at all, given what we don't know.
Well, they can manipulate consciousness the same way we can manipulate radio waves.
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And it's and I mean there's been a study that's been going on for a long time at Princeton or it was at Princeton. I think maybe it's moved out of Princeton now, but it was called the Princeton Global Consciousness Study. And it started out with, I guess it was a graduate student at Princeton came up with the idea of having students concentrate on a machine that is essentially a coin flip machine. It's a machine that comes up either A or B, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they had these students come in and try to concentrate on getting one result. And they found that when they did that, the machine stopped being random, and you started getting more heads than tails than you should have by chance. And they thought, and they kept doing it. They kept bringing other students in. Was it this person had an unusual power? And they bring them. Nope. Everyone that tried it, they got it. Pretty much, they got a good result. And they said the results were it was really billions to one against it being chance. And then then they I was going to say, and then they decided to expand it. They said, well, what happens when large groups of people are focusing on an event? And so they set up random number generators all over the planet at different institutes around the planet. And then they waited for some event. And as luck would have it for them, this was right before 9/11 happened. And so when 9/11 happened, all of these random number generators around the world that they were monitoring all went off randomness and started producing patterns. And they found this a number of times when the funeral of Pierre Trudeau in Canada, like almost every Canadian was listening to the funeral service when at that time Justin Trudeau was speaking, doing his eulogy for his dad. Like almost every Canadian was listening, and they found that the random number generators in Canada went off randomness. And they found this over and over again. They've been having this result since 2001, over and over and over again. And there's no explanation for it other than that consciousness has an impact on the physical world.
Wow.
So if we're baby steps of understanding how consciousness interacts with the world.
Yeah, we're really at its infancy. We have again, there's no reason to think that that these aliens, who probably must predate us, right, in terms of existence. Yeah. But what this does for me, Dave, is it confirms, going back to hockey, that I am responsible for the Rangers Stanley Cup win, because I watched every game, and I used to sit there and I would channel every ounce of my brain energy into them winning. And everyone thought I was nuts because I really, truly believed that I was having an impact. And then they won the Stanley Cup and haven't won it since.
Then here's an idea. Why don't you watch the goddamn Maple Leafs?
Who the hell watches the goddamn Maple Leafs?
Me. since the earliest memories I have.
See, I'm so old that I remembered the Quebec Nordiques. That's how old I am. And I liked them better than the Maple Leafs.
Well, I am so old, I remember when the Leafs won the Stanley Cup.
When was that?
67.
Oh, God, 1867? I don't remember.
1967, last time we won the Cup.
You're not using
the
your
centenary
brain
of Canada.
Enough. You need to really.
And believe me, there are millions of Leaf fans who every year go, "This is our year."
Yeah.
But maybe we just don't believe. Maybe we just don't believe hard
enough.
You don't
believe enough. You need to believe more. Now I'm really sure of it now. But although I haven't focused that much energy on the Rangers winning again, so now I need to refocus my energy. And it doesn't work for the Yankees for some strange reason.
And you're not a Devils fan.
Hell no.
But you're in New Jersey.
It's an expansion team. They in Colorado. The Rangers are one of the original teams. I mean,
I'm original 6. I'm all in favor of. I love.
Yeah. And it's just the whole culture. But no offense to anybody who's a Devils fan. You're better than Flyers fans, but still, it's not, you got to be a Rangers fan. I mean, at least when you're my age,
I was a Flyers fan because my uncle played for the Flyers when I was a kid.
No way.
Yeah, Rick Foley played for the Flyers for four seasons, I think.
Wow. What years?
Right up from like 72 up until just before they won their first Stanley Cup.
So who was he playing with back then? I'm trying to think.
Like it would have been like Bobby Clark and Rick McLeish and
God. He would have been playing against Bobby Orr, not.
Yeah, would have been Bobby Orr, Phil Esposito. He actually was brought up by Chicago in the Stanley Cup final between Chicago and Montreal in '71, I think it was. Because I was living in Nova Scotia when we watched it. He was brought up from the minors to play in the Stanley Cup final.
Was that in Chicago? Was it
in Chicago? He played for Chicago, and then the next year he was traded to Philadelphia and played there.
What an unfortunate trade for Chicago.
Rick Foley. But the Flyers became this great team.
Yeah. Well, that's debatable. Just on the out of a point of principle, I can't say that, but I can't say it about the Islanders either. But so that's fine. But I always,
although they had a pretty great run.
And then I remember the Senators showed up somewhere, and I was like, the Senators, and then that's have you? By the way, have you ever been to Lake Placid, New York, to the hockey to the rink there from the Olympics?
No.
Oh, I think it's called Herb Brooks Arena now, and it's obviously the Miracle on Ice. But if obviously you like hockey, I mean, yes, that's American history hockey. But
we didn't see it as a miracle. We saw it as a great disappointment.
Well, you guys, did we beat you or did Russia beat you?
I think you beat the Russians.
We beat the Russians in that game, but
the Russians knocked us out too. I think
that's right. I'm trying to think how we got to, because that wasn't the final. That was this. Right. So where did you guys get knocked off in that? I don't even remember. But
we were in the semifinal.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's still worth, just as a hockey fan, still going.
Yeah, it was a great story.
Yeah, it was a great story. Yeah, I mean, and but it's funny because I was such a huge hockey fan. The total, obviously, segue from the alien thing. Sorry, but I was such a big hockey fan that I would sing the Canadian national anthem and still to this day know every word, because it's This is going to be something I'm going to get canceled for. It's a really good anthem. It's like it's a really easy to sing anthem. It's a really good anthem. Like, I hesitate to say it's better than our anthem, but it's a good anthem.
And they even took the sexism out of it.
They did?
Yeah, it's no longer in all our sons command. It's in all of us command.
Oh, go Canada. Look at that. I had no idea.
Yeah. And there's still, God is still in there too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
We still,
I remember Celine Dion singing the Canadian national anthem at one of the All-Star games before she was famous. And I was like, wow, that lady can sing. And somebody can fact check me on this, but I feel like that was like Mike Gartner was playing in that game. So it had to be like before they won the cup, but that's going back a ways.
I think it was David Letterman used to go on and on about how much he loved the Canadian national anthem.
Really?
Yeah, he used to talk about it's a beautiful anthem. Beautiful, beautiful song.
He's right. I mean, it should be talked about more. I feel like we could borrow, a few pointers from you guys on your anthem. We can't have an anthem. We can't sing. That doesn't work.
Yeah. No, it's so, the American anthem is so violent. It's about a war and rockets and bombing.
That's not American at all.
Yeah. It's like,
it should be about peaceful protest.
Yeah,
that's the framework.
Ours is all about being the true North, strong and free, with glowing hearts.
It's a Hallmark card. It really is. It's like chicken soup for the soul in an anthem. Yeah,
it is very nice. It's a very anodyne and non-militaristic anthem. Yeah,
it's so Canadian in that way. It's because that's the way that I see the Canadians is to your word, anodyne. Peaceful. Yeah, I have a former brother-in-law who's from Toronto.
Shush, my dogs are barking.
Of course, now I can't find that Celine Dion song, but she sang several national anthems. She sang it in French.
Yeah, my friend Dave Hill, who's a brilliant comedian and musician. He performed the national anthem in it was in Anaheim, right? Yeah, he did it with the Toronto Maple Leafs in Anaheim.
Oh, really?
And I actually had tickets for that game, but I didn't go because I had COVID. But he played the national anthems on his guitar, like Jimi Hendrix style.
Oh, that's cool.
Which he got attacked for, like people, because he also did him like he does this very funny shredding, where it's like really over the top heavy metal shredding.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Hockey fans like their anthems pretty pure.
Yeah, and if you get the joke, then you know what I think. But yeah,
Right.
but it was I loved it. I thought it was hilarious and
funny.
great. Yeah.
By the way, I don't know if you know this. Since you must know this. You live in New York part of the year, right? You said
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know
most
that
of the year now.
the Rangers have an influencer program? Like it's like a not an influencer program, but it's like a they have a VIP program for famous people.
Oh no.
Okay.
No, I
I'm
get in
about
on
to
that.
change your life, okay? And you're gonna
Okay.
thank me for this by taking me to a Rangers game someday because I'm about to change your life. I swear to
All
you.
right.
Okay.
Well, they're going to make the playoffs, right? So I'll be back.
I mean, we'll see with them. It's a perpetual life cycle of heartbreak. But we needed Mark Messier to win is what we needed. That's what we needed. We needed basically the Oilers so we could win the cup. And that was fine because I still love Mark Messier, who I got to meet, by the way. That was very cool. And I also got to meet Gretzky, although I scared the shit out of him. I'm going to hit record after I tell you this because nobody knows this. But yeah, but I actually scared Gretzky a little bit because it was at the U.S. Open and all these people started bothering him. But Messier was a gentleman. And anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gretzky's also turned out to be kind of an asshole, which is a bummer, right? Like that's kind of
Gretzky. I don't know.
That's what I've heard.
I don't know.
That's what I've heard. But he's like friends with Trump and stuff. But anyway.
Oh.
Yeah. So my friend Steve Hofstetter is a comedian. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's
I know the name. Yeah.
Well known. He's got a big YouTube following. He tours and stuff. He's a great guy. He's a New Yorker also, lifelong Rangers fan, also a Mets fan, which is a shame. But so he knows I'm a Rangers fan. And he's like, hey, I'm coming up from Pittsburgh or whatever. I'm going to the thing I usually do. I'm like, what's that? And he's like, oh, the Rangers have this program. If you're, notable in any way or famous, like then you get access through some other gate where they bring you down into the president's suite under the ice. And then it's like a big party and there's all the food and drinks and all the things. And then you walk up to the ice and you have seats right behind the bench. So you're right there on the ice and it's all free. And before the thing, they'll give you, there's a whole separate part of the garden where they have like a sit down meal and they pour like $100 bottles of wine and it's a whole experience and you can go anytime you want and it's free. Just give them a heads up that you're coming via email and there's a guy who I'm going to put you in touch with. And then whenever you're there, they put you, if you're there, they'll put you on the camera and then the crowd goes crazy and then that's it. And it's I will stop because it says other
No,
thing.
I want, no, that's, you have no idea how much you're exciting me right now.
So because I'm a dork and I don't have a poker face and I'm in this experience, like this is a dream of mine because I grew up just dreaming of being that close to the bench. I used to go to their open practices in Rye when I was a kid and wait at 3 a.m. for them to start skating at 9. I would sit there on the cold ice floor waiting for the players to come and practice. That's how diehard I was. But so I'm geeking out this entire time, like, this is so cool. So much so that all these people who work at the garden start bringing me gifts. They're like, you like this? Here, take this helmet. Do you like this? Here, take this hat. Do you like this? Take this shirt. And they're just like giving me all this stuff. I went home. I have it with a mock-up of a helmet.
Wow.
And so and my friend Steve has the guy's name because he tried to put me in touch with him. I wasn't famous enough. Shocker. And so I did not get into the program. But you're Dave Foley. I mean,
well, I just look at. I know my buddy Mike was in that. I guess. Yeah, I just thought that was just for Mike Myers. Yeah.
Of course, Mike Myers is in it. Yeah, my buddy Mike. My buddy Mike is Mike Myers. Yes, of course. Yeah. Your buddy Mike Myers. Yes, it's a whole program. When we were there, it was like some chef Ann Burrell was in there, and I've seen other Tom Hanks is in the program, and you have.
I gotta get. Well, then all right, we're going to a hockey game.
Okay, what you should do first is bring your buddy Mike, and then the whole place will go frigging insane. Dave Foley and Mike Myers together, forget it. Oh my god!
He moved to Hawaii, so he's yeah.
He did?
Yeah.
Oh, did not know that. That's so not Canadian. Yeah. Okay. What I'm gonna do is after we're done, I'm gonna text Steve, ask him a thing. Then I'm gonna send you.
Sure.
All right. It's a no-brainer. Yeah, it was so cool. Like it was the coolest experience. I mean, you can see and the shift changes and the sticks are all right there and it's like they're snotting in front of you. It was amazing. Like the coolest.
Oh, cool.
No, you can't beat that. Okay. So I'm gonna go back and then I'm gonna start with our last segment, which is really fast. It's 3 totally random questions. And
okay.
Yeah. So then I really appreciate your generosity. My time.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Oh my God. I feel so bad. Like you've given me like all this time. Okay. But the alien thing is absolutely riveting. And now I'm really freaked out. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to talk more with you about that anytime you want.
I just think that this is stuff, again, that people are not talking about as much, but although it is more than they were.
Yeah, but still, the fact that it's the most important story on earth and no one's really talking about it.
It's
the fact that Chuck Schumer, that legislation got no press coverage.
I inject legislation into my veins every day. It's what I do. I wake up and start looking to see what's going on, and I had no idea. Yeah. I had no idea.
And Kristen Gillibrand and Marco Rubio also wrote legislation together. That was UFO They wrote legislation to cut off funding to any government programs that don't report what they know about UFOs.
See, the only reason I heard about that was because of this national security threat that was flagged last week about the Russian weapon in space. And then that legislation came up, but you know what they did not mention in that whole conversation?
UFOs.
Right, no.
Oh,
they didn't talk about that at all.
No, well, and also the guy who made that public, Mike Turner.
Yep.
Is the guy who gutted Chuck Schumer's legislation, because Chuck Schumer and Mike Round's legislation built into it a 9-person panel, civilian panel, that basically said all information about UFOs would become declassified, would all be assumed to be declassified, and if military wants to, or CIA want to make a case that anything should stay classified, it has to go through this 9-person civilian panel, and they would report directly to the president.
Oh my God.
It also had eminent domain provisions so that the government could take back recovered UFOs from people like Lockheed Martin.
Whoa.
So Mike Rounds gutted those provisions in the legislation.
Turner did. Mike Turner.
I'm sorry, Mike Turner. Yeah, gutted it. And just coincidentally, Mike Turner is the representative for Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is very famous in UFO lore as being the place that the Roswell debris was brought.
Ooh.
And also was the home of Project Blue Book.
What is that?
That was the official government investigation into UFOs back from the 50s up to 1969, and it was the lead scientist was a guy named J. Allen Hynek, whose son Paul is a friend of mine. But basically, that was the program to study UFOs, but it was mostly wound up being a cover-up. And J. Allen Hynek, who was brought in, basically his job was to debunk UFOs. But through working on it, he came to believe UFOs were real. And then when he left the program, spent the rest of his life fighting for disclosure on UFOs.
And that's Mike Turner's district. So that's very interesting. I wonder if, how many layers deep that whole thing goes back in his donorship.
He gets a lot of money, from them.
Exactly. His donors are like, no.
Because that's the biggest source of money in Dayton, Ohio.
That's in Dayton?
Yeah.
Okay, now it's all coming together. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. My nephew was briefly stationed out of that base for like 1 minute before he went to Virginia. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of other big industry in the area.
Yeah. My sister, I can say this before I start recording. My sister flew the B-1B after 9/11. She was she was the navigator, bombardier or whatever. Now I want to ask her so badly. Kim, she doesn't tell me anything because you know what she does now? No, because she'll kill me. Now her job is for geospatial. She reads satellite imagery in a dark room all day. She knows shit. My sister knows things. She'll never tell me.
Yeah. Well, that's where David Gresh worked. He was in the geospatial office. He was also with the National Reconnaissance Office.
My sister will never tell me. If she tells me, she will kill me. Because she said to me in the past, I've asked her about Gaza. She's like, if I knew that, I wouldn't tell you. And I can't tell you. So don't ask. So I was like, Okay. So
Yeah.
she must know things.
Yeah, the geospatial office. Yeah, they know things. They've seen things.
Okay. 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 I'm fine. Okay, wait. Are Men in Black real? That's not real.
Not only are they real, it's weirder than
Oh God.
what you think. James Lukatsky, who ran the secret OSAP program that was funded by Harry Reid. That's the one, it's the real program that the New York Times article in 2017 basically outed the ATIP program, which was a Pentagon program that was unfunded.
Okay.
But ATIP grew out of a program called OSAP that was funded by Harry Reid, and there's a dark money project. And OSAP was run by a guy named James Lukatsky. There's actually two. My friend George Knapp has written 2 books with Lukatsky, and Colm Kelleher was also a scientist on the program. But Lukatsky, they were on my friend Jeremy Corbell's podcast with George Knapp, and he dropped quite nonchalantly said, "Well, there were people out there who like to present themselves as being the Men in Black. They try to use that guise and pass themselves off as the Men in Black, but the real Men in Black aren't human."
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And he said, "Yeah, so there's a lot of encounters with these Men in Black showing up, and but the real ones aren't human."
Okay.
And this is and James Lukatsky, an intelligence officer and physicist.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. All right. Well, hit record. There's a really good chance I'm not sleeping for the next week. And I'm probably not going to look at the sky for a while at night or ever. But that's the thing. It's like, that's what I was doing when I was in my early, like that around 11, 12. I was so curious. And then the more I would look, the more I would like learn, the more terrified I'd become. I'm like, oh, I can't look at this anymore. It's too scary. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to hit record and then we'll go to the random.
Okay.
And then I swear to God, I'll let you go. And then I'll text Steve. Okay. Because you have to do this. I mean, like, I mean that all this food is free.
I was going to say, you have all my contact. You have my phone number and email. And everything.
Yeah. I could probably, I probably could just introduce you to Steve via email because that would be a good connection to make anyway. Because funny people should know funny people, and he's just an awesome person. He's a really charitable, really great guy. And he is funny, but and he knows all the people over there, so he would be the best person to talk to. But anyway, yeah, you got to do it. It's incredible. And then someday my other bucket list is to go into the locker room, which I can do on a tour, but like when they're actually in there is the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone down some serious, interesting rabbit holes that I have now lots and lots and lots more questions regarding.
Yeah.
And we'll do
UFOs and hockey. And hockey is even more mysterious to Americans. So
that's very true. Although not this one. This one. And it's becoming increasingly popular here. But I would arguably say it is the best sport. And one of the things when I was a kid, I was like, I want to be Canadian because I want a backyard hockey rink. And I was like, I can't even skate, but I knew that But I would have moved to Calgary. I don't know why. Probably the Olympics there. I was like, I like Calgary.
Very cold. I was just there for 6 months last winter.
Oh, yeah. No, then I will pass on Calgary.
Like 30 below, kind of cold.
Oh, no. Like New Jersey is too cold for me. So I'm good on that. Is there a hot part of
Canada? Vancouver's as warm as it gets.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So we'll skip that. All right. And since we've covered hockey, aliens, kids in the hall. Now I'm going to segue to the totally random rapid fire question round that I conclude all of my podcasts with. These are the most serious, hard-hitting questions of the entire interview.
Okay.
All right. Number 1, we've discussed at length that you believe in aliens, as do I. Do you believe in ghosts?
Yeah. I think the same thing with there's just far too much anecdotal evidence, and ghosts are far too big a part of every culture, going back to the beginnings of recorded history, for there to be nothing to it. It's just, it just doesn't make sense that there's nothing to it, but it's persisted throughout human history, that people keep seeing them.
Yeah.
And also there's also ghost phenomena and like poltergeist phenomena, and it's all kind of interrelated with UAP phenomena. In fact, I get James Lukatsky, who ran OSAP and did studies at Skinwalker Ranch, basically said if you can't study the UFO problem without studying the paranormal problem, because it's all part of the same thing. So it's and again, it comes back to the notion that it's all related to consciousness, and and consciousness is, as I said, I watched that documentary about people surviving death. That it's all related to consciousness, life, death, ghosts, UFOs. They're all interrelated. That's my answer.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. I had never considered that actually at all, because now that I realize that makes a lot of sense. I would also think if you could talk to the ghosts, they would have probably some things to say about the aliens they've seen.
Yeah.
Right. Like, let me tell you a few stories.
Right? Well, there are abduction stories of people encountering dead relatives.
What?
Yeah. It's not an uncommon aspect of the abductee phenomena.
In the so I'm picturing like the cocoons that I pictured in the, like they do in the horrible movies where they're in these like cocoons, and okay, that's what
no. This more pleasant. They're just there, and dead relatives show up and say hello and say, "Don't worry, you're going to be fine."
Wow. Okay. Whoa. Okay. By the way, total segue really fast. I'm just remembering there was a movie when I was a kid in the 80s, and I feel like it was in like Minnesota or somewhere with big trees where all these firefighters or something, they get abducted.
Yes, that Travis Walton story.
Yeah.
Yeah, up in Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was big trees. Yeah. And there was a bunch of guys, right? It wasn't just one guy.
They worked for the forestry department.
Yes.
And there was like 6 of them. Yeah. He had like Travis and 5 coworkers. And they saw a UFO in the woods. He went out to investigate it, was hit by a blue light, and knocked like 10 feet in the air. His friends all panicked and took off. And then about 15 minutes later, when they calmed down, they said, "Well, we got to go back for Travis." They went back, and he was gone. The UFO was gone. They reported it to the police, and over 5 days, they were all accused of murdering him. And there was searches for his body in the woods, and all these guys were doing polygraph tests, and which they all passed. And but they were, again, they were being accused of murdering their friend, and still they stuck to their story that they had encountered a UFO. So if if it was a prank, you would think once you're looking at a murder charge, you'd go, "All right, I'm kidding,"
Right.
But yeah, Travis, well, he was missing for 5 days, and then was released and called his brother-in-law on a payphone to come get him, and he had no idea that he'd been gone for 5 days. So that's a Travis Walton story.
Okay.
Yeah, the movie was called Fire in the Sky, I think.
Yes. So again, I'm going back. That's got to be like 87, 88.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that neighborhood, because I was with my girlfriends, and it was all we could do at the time because we were only kids, and our parents drop us off at the movies, pick us up. I remember that freaking me out. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Probably I'm gonna go with 88.
Yeah. I'm actually going to go at Contact in the Desert this summer, and I guess Travis Walton's going to be there. I've never met him, so I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, that's wow! So he's still involved in the whole. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Very involved in the community. Yeah. Okay.
That's cool. That's a weird thing to suddenly remember, because I totally forgot about that movie. But okay. So movies.
If you want, Payne Lindsay did a great interview with Travis.
Who?
On his Payne Lindsay does he does like a true crime podcast series.
My girlfriends love true crime, but so they would know who that is. But I don't.
Yeah, he's like a superstar of podcasting.
Okay.
But he did a podcast called High Strange that was all about UFOs last year.
Oh, see now, my girlfriend should listen to that. They only listen to the murder ones and
But
like.
he did a great interview, and we had him on our show. Payne, very very nice guy, beautiful too, really
Really?
handsome fella. Yeah.
God damn
Yeah,
it, that's
prepare
not right.
yourself. Yeah,
Fair.
wear comfortable clothing when you watch this podcast.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay. Now I'm probably blushing. Okay. Yes, because typically the ball gowns that I wear would be just
Yeah,
as I saunter.
It interfere with you. Your
As I
enjoyment.
saunter around my home, in my own, yeah, in my meth den as it is. We were talking about movies.
Go on.
What is number one? But like, no, you're the best alien movie. By the way, there's another memory I had because we read War of the Worlds we listened to War of the Worlds when I was a kid because that happened in New Jersey, right? So that original Orson Welles. That reminds me also of Citizen Kane. Was Orson Welles in it? Didn't know what the question? I forget. Okay, so what's the best alien movie and the worst alien movie? Or like, sort of, yeah.
Best. I don't. I think one of my favorites is obviously the best. I mean, I guess if you're gonna say the best, maybe it's Close Encounters.
Oh yeah, that's so good.
But Day of the Earth Stood Still is up there for me too.
I've never seen that one.
The original Robert Wise from the 50s. Although I have to say that I think the original Day of the Earth Stood Still made in the 50s is much more of a Christ parable than a real alien movie. It's more like basically it's basically a UFO version of the Jesus story.
Oh.
And as like many atheists, I love the Jesus story.
It's a good story.
It's such a good story. The alien in that played by Michael Rennie, his space name is Klaatu, but his human name that he takes when he's hiding from the authorities is John Carpenter, which is of course JC, Jesus Christ.
Oh,
and also Christ was carpenter.
Yeah.
And there's a whole thing where he's when he originally presents himself to the authorities on Earth, they kill him. Oh, and then his robot Gort revives him, so he's killed, resurrected.
Yeah, the Jesus-y thing, maybe not.
It's a very Jesus-y story. Yeah, but it's a great movie.
Well, which one does the whole story the most like disservice of the most
disservice? I probably have to go with Independence Day.
Oh, that's funny. The movie's so bad.
It's a terrible movie.
Terrible. Terrible.
And the script is awful. Some of the worst dialogue ever forced out of an actor's mouth. So I would say Independence Day, worst UFO movie. What
are your thoughts on the Tom Cruise War of the Worlds?
You know what? I remember being really opposed to it when it was first coming out, and then watching it, and it's really good.
It's really well
actually done. Really good. Yeah, it's really well done. Yeah,
it's like the scene when they get in the car and they finally get it to start, and everything behind them is just.
Yeah, and that the 747 crashing in the neighborhood, and which is cool. You can still go out and see that at Universal Studios on the tour.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That neighborhood is still there.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
It's really well done. And Tom Cruise is always good. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, he's just always good.
The cake. I mean, you're not really ever going to get, maybe there's a bad cake out there, but your cake's going to usually be pretty it's going to deliver.
Yeah. And Tom Cruise always delivers. You know?
And that's not Spielberg. Is it Spielberg?
It is Spielberg.
Right. And again, there's the magic of Spielberg because nobody does anything, especially when it comes to lighting and I mean, even E.T., right? So obviously.
And it's like, and it's, and obviously War of the Worlds is much darker than most of Spielberg's, although E.T. is pretty dark at points.
Oh God, when he's in the ravine and and Elliot's dying and he's but the scene
and another little Jesus element in there too.
Because I realized that. But the scene with Tim Robbins in War of the Worlds, that whole sort of section of the film where like the vines and the blood and they're getting sucked up to that's pretty dark for
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a dark movie. Yeah.
Which shouldn't be because it's such a lighthearted subject. But
yeah. But it does have a happy ending. It is Spielberg.
It's Spielberg. But right. The original War of the Worlds must have been, I was obsessed too with what a head trip that must have been for people to be like really thinking
the radio play?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's been very much exaggerated over the course of history. I mean, the whole nation wasn't freaking out.
Right.
There was a small group of people, and that made for good news, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a small group of people that took it seriously and panicked.
Right. In Jersey, right?
Yeah, Grover's Mills. Yeah.
Yeah, we usually pretty calm, I'm supposed.
Yeah, as I say, most people realize they were listening to a radio play. You know.
You can't fool people now. I mean, even with the truth.
Yeah.
now they're like, no.
Because in fact, the whole second half of War of the Worlds drops the whole broadcast conceit. And you're with the professor from Princeton as he's wandering around trying to survive, and it just becomes a straight radio play.
Yeah. Well, very interesting. But again, we can't make people believe things that are real now when they believe things that weren't back then. Okay, last question is also alien related. I apologize.
All right, no problem.
This is in your lane. If you were a scientist and you got a scientist or an astronaut or whatever, but a scientist, I guess, that could get to another planet, and you got to meet, the native inhabitants of that planet and not die, what would you ask them? What would maybe the first question be?
If they're interested in improv workshops.
That's a good question.
By the way, my answer to that, if anyone asks me that question, is no.
And okay. That pretty much walked right into one. Okay, second question would be
second question to the aliens.
Yeah. After they say no, thank you.
If they don't want to pay $60 for an improv workship,
right. They don't have a big demand for improv workshops.
I guess it depends. Are they a species more advanced than us, less advanced?
I would say that they're more advanced than us, and you don't have to talk to them, I guess, because they can read your mind.
Yeah. Maybe the first question would be, what happens when you die?
That is fascinating. Yes.
Because I think they know.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. That is fascinating. All right. So now we have a lot to think about because we know that they probably don't want improv comedy.
Yeah, no. Right. And that's my advice to everyone. Everyone just steer clear. Most of the time improv's a bad idea.
No, never a bad idea. As a person who fully 1000% appreciates all of your contributions to comedy in this world and is raising her son to not just know you as a bug, someday he will appreciate as well, because he very much wants to be like, he enjoys comedy and he's a very funny kid. So you sketch comedy, improv comedy, whatever you've brought into the world, whatever you're putting out there still it's an incredible service, because I mean, honestly, humor is medicine, as you could probably attest.
Yeah, I certainly comedy certainly helped me get through my childhood and adolescence.
And now more than ever, with the craziness in the world and like just how heavy things can be and how uncertain things can feel, and this layer of comedy is sanity saving for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's being able to keep a sense of humor as modern democracy fails is good.
We'll be laughing as we go over the side of that cliff.
Yeah.
Oh boy, we'll be laughing. Yeah, as we're like, aren't you the guy from that TV show?
Yeah, but again, this year might be the year that human dominance ends anyway. So
yeah, So I guess, yeah, like it maybe I always think there's no superhero coming to save us, but maybe an alien can come and
I keep getting from people keep intimating that there's some very, very big things are going to come out soon about
oh,
the non-human intelligence that we're sharing the planet with.
oh, okay.
Yep.
Well, hopefully that makes
Well,
the news cycle for more than a day.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Um, well, so okay, you have your podcast, which I'm not gonna butcher the name again.
I'll
But
say it's really
really
question mark exclamation mark period, because that symbolizes the stages you go through of acknowledging the UAP phenomena of curiosity, shock, and acceptance.
okay, that's smart.
That's what the punctuation represents.
Oh my God, that was intentional. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I'm gonna very interesting. See, because mine has like question mark, exclamation mark, question mark, exclamation, and it's really just more of like just swearing, but not swearing. This is really
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, this was the path that everyone goes through.
That's very interesting because it is there. That is true, and hopefully, yeah, we can get to the acceptance parts so that we can start acknowledging reality versus like
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And then season 5 of Fargo is out there for people, which is
Yeah. Yeah. Which is
critically acclaimed. Holy crap.
great show. It's a great show.
Everyone,
Amazing cast.
amazing cast. Everyone is raving about it. I mean, just
Yeah.
incredible.
Well, Noah Hawley is one of the best writers in television, the showrunner. So, and not just all the writers that work with him on it as well are all fantastic.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there you go.
That's on FX.
Yeah,
like
on FX and on Hulu. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's again incredible cast. Your character is very interesting, and you have to wear an eye patch, right? Was that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it must have been weird. But are people recognizing you now for that role, which maybe they hadn't?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's I think people recognize me just from that, but then I think a lot of people who knew me from other stuff are, I guess, maybe recognizing what I look like now.
Right.
I'm definitely getting stopped a lot more often lately. When I go to the grocery store and that sort of thing.
That's got to be wild. I'm sure your career spans so long that you've probably had this in waves and starts, and that has to be strange and surreal, but also a testament to the fact that you're still, doing this,
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm pretty surprised. I'm surprised I got to do it at all growing up, in Toronto. Didn't think I'd be in show business, but the fact that I've been in show business for almost 40 years,
Yeah, but see, I mean, this really just attests to just how special what you bring to the table is, because people recognize it when you guys were doing those live shows, and people would say that this is unique, this is new, this is one of a kind. Nobody else is doing this. Even Lorne Michaels, my buddy, my best friend on the planet.
Yeah.
He said that about you guys. You know what I mean?
Well, he did something that Lorne never does. He flew up and watched a show.
Really?
He flew to Toronto and saw a Kids in the Hall show, and Lorne does not do that. That was pretty remarkable.
And then he stole 2 of them away, right?
No, this was after that.
Oh,
he sent Al Franken up first. I think Tom Davis and Al Franken came up, and they watched us do our show in an empty Rivoli, with no audience.
Whoa.
And my friend Dave Thomas was there from SCTV, was there as well.
Oh God.
And then so they hired Mark and Bruce, went down to write for Saturday Night Live in 85, 86 season, the worst season ever. And
you tell them that?
Oh yeah, and then the end. But they know. I mean, Lorne fired everyone after that.
Oh my God.
And then, but then near the end of that season, Lorne flew up to Toronto to see the Kids in the Hall perform together, because he kept hearing that he should, from people like Catherine O'Hara and Marty Short and Joe Flaherty and
just
Dave
those
Thomas.
People.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Wow. Well,
so they all kept saying you should go see these guys. So Lorne came. He did. I mean, pretty amazing. Lorne sat in a, really smoky backroom bar, and watched us do our show.
Wow, that's incredible. Again, it speaks to the power of what you guys are doing. I mean, that's why you're all still around, and you're all still, this magic's still there, why the show still holds up, and why every time I open a container of coleslaw, I've got 30 Helens.
Now, did you watch the reboot?
No, not yet. Don't kill me. Because I'm really bad. I know this can sound shocking to you. I tweet a lot, so I don't actually watch a ton of TV because I'm usually exhausted from screens by like end of the day. So I'm like, I gotta watch this, but then I don't, and that's a terrible failing on my end. I need to watch it.
I mostly just watch hockey and documentaries.
Yeah, see, that's good though. But I need to watch the reboot, and I'm owning myself by admitting that I didn't yet because
that's fine.
A loser with no life.
Not obligated to, but if you like the Kids in the Hall,
no,
it'll make you laugh.
I know I have to. And actually, that might be the best way to introduce my 14-year-old son to it because.
Well, okay. All right. But I will tell you there's a lot of full frontal male nudity in episode 1.
Really?
So I hope he's ready for that.
I think he's seen his own full frontal male nudity.
Yeah, as long as he's comfortable seeing that in the room with his mom.
Oh, you know what? Well, that's a good question.
You could always skip the first episode and stream. Yeah.
Or I'll just watch that one. Yeah. There was that might be awkward. That might be the kind of thing.
Yeah, because it's me and Kevin. So it's not something anyone's gonna enjoy.
Wait. What?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. And it's a spoiler. I've not totally spoiled it, but the comedy premise is sound.
That is wow. That took some balls. I mean, I had to say that, right?
Yes.
I'm sure no one's ever said that about that before in the history of time. Yes. Okay. Well, I will put that on my to-do list.
All right.
And not mine and my son's to-do list. But yeah. Okay. Well, I thank you. Thank you so much, Dave Foley. I took your entire day. I'm pretty sure.
No problem. I'll walk my dogs and they'll stop complaining.
Right. They're like, who is this bitch? Why doesn't she shut up? Meanwhile, my dog is like, I'm worried she's not breathing. She moved once.
I saw her wander in the background. Yeah.
She moved once. She let me pet her ass. And then she was back to sleep. She's the laziest hound dog there ever was in history.
Yeah.
But thank you for all this time and for the incredible conversation.
All right. And we're going to a Rangers game.
Yeah, I gotta set that up because I'm gonna change your life. I'm gonna change Dave Foley's life, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not gonna tell you how, but I'm gonna make it happen. So
all right.
Dave Foley, thank you again. This concludes this episode of the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast. Guys, I hope you really enjoy this conversation because it is a journey. All right.
Great. And good because I have to pee again.
You have to pee again. All right. Bye.